Look at the scale of these stone ruins. They belong to Kishkindha, an ancient empire built directly into the rock of the landscape. For generations, these walls stood as the definitive power in the region, a stronghold that appeared as permanent as the mountains surrounding it. The kingdom's strength relied on a specific hierarchy. You had Vali, a king whose physical power was considered unbeatable. Beside him was Sugriva, a brother who had spent a lifetime proving his loyalty. Watching them both was young Prince Angada, the heir to a future that seemed entirely secure. That security was challenged when a powerful being named Mayavi arrived at the city gates. He issued a public, personal challenge to the king. For a ruler whose authority was tied to his reputation for invincibility, ignoring Mayavi was not an option. Vali accepted the fight immediately. Vali and Sugriva pursued the enemy into the wilderness until Mayavi ducked into a subterranean chasm. It was a terrifying, unknown entrance that swallows the light, leading straight down into the earth. Before entering, Vali gave his brother a single, unambiguous command: stay at the entrance, guard the exit, and do not leave until he returned. Neither brother realized that this physical bottleneck would act as a ticking clock. In the coming days, the isolation of that cave would dismantle the trust that held their entire civilization together. At first, Sugriva waited with the confidence of someone who had seen Vali win 100 times. But hours turned into days. The cave stayed silent. There were no sounds of struggle and no signal from the king. The absolute lack of data began to take a psychological toll. Then, a stream of blood flowed out from the entrance. In the absence of any other information, Sugriva saw this as a definitive signal. To him, the invincible king had finally been defeated in the dark. He was suddenly forced into a crisis of leadership. If he entered the cave to investigate, he risked losing the kingdom's last remaining leader. If he stayed, he left the capital vulnerable to a power vacuum. Choosing to protect the state, Sugriva pushed a massive boulder over the entrance, sealing it shut. He returned to the capital to stabilize the government, acting on the belief that his brother was gone and the kingdom required a transition of power to survive. He made a choice based on the only evidence he had. In high-stakes leadership, acting on a logical conclusion derived from incomplete data can still trigger a catastrophic chain of events. Deep inside the cave, the reality was different. Vali had survived. After an exhausting, brutal struggle, he eventually secured a victory over Mayavi. Wounded and tired, Vali began the long track back to the surface. He expected to find his brother waiting to pull him out. Instead, he found the exit physically blocked by a massive stone. Trapped in the dark, Vali looked for a reason why his most loyal ally would seal him in. Without the ability to see what Sugriva had seen at the surface, Vali concluded that the blocked exit was a deliberate act of betrayal, a coup designed to steal the throne. This diagram illustrates the impact of that physical barrier. A single timeline strikes the rock and splits into two isolated realities. Sugriva sees blood and assumes his brother is dead. Vali sees a sealed door and assumes his brother is a traitor. When these assumptions harden into belief in the dark, the objective facts of the event lose their power. Perspective becomes the only truth that matters. Vali eventually summoned the strength to break the seal and return to Kishkindha. When he arrived, these two conflicting realities finally collided. Sugriva tried to explain the blood and his decision to protect the kingdom, but Vali was convinced he was hearing the lies of a thief. Years of shared history and brotherhood vanished because neither side could look past their own limited data. The result was a violent fracture. Vali drove Sugriva out, making his loyal protector a hunted fugitive. Young Angada stood at the center. He watched the men he admired turn into enemies. The stable future he was promised was replaced by paranoia and civil strife. The political fallout was immediate. The kingdom was now divided by internal conflict, stripping away the invincibility that had protected it for generations. Far from the capital, two armed travelers, Rama and Lakshmana, were moving through the forest. They were heading toward a kingdom they didn't yet know was broken, entering a power vacuum created by the events in the cave. The fall of Kishkindha was driven by a total failure to communicate through a physical barrier. It demonstrates that for even the strongest empires, The most dangerous threat is the set of assumptions people make when they can no longer see each other.